Welcome. The topic of this video is memory. Have you ever gone into an exam and drawn a total blank? Where everything seems familiar but not really? You can remember where the information is on the page or where it is in your notes, but you just can't seem to recall it. Well, guess what? That means you really never really learned it. Your mind is not an Etch-a-Sketch pad. There is no eraser in your brain. The problem is you didn't really learn it. You put it in your short-term memory, but your storage space ran out. Your goal is to understand how you remember information and try strategies for learning difficult material that you never tried before. So let's spend a little time reflecting on your experiences with memorization. You know, I really don't like the words memorizing or memorization. I'd rather think of it as just learning. There are three aspects of memorizing or learning that I want you to think about. First, in reflecting about your memorizing experiences, think about what special ways or tricks you used successfully to learn in school, but you haven't used in college. Here's an example. Remember the spelling rule, I before E except after C, and that helps you remember how to spell words like receive? I'm sure there are lots of other mnemonic devices that you may have used and maybe even still remember. Some may be a song, an acronym, a nonsense or acronym sentence, or a rhyme. Do you use that special trick to recall information you need to learn now? Well, second, what have your learning preferences taught you about how you can remember more efficiently and effectively? You probably don't even think why you do some things to remember information, but you just know they've been successful for you. For example, writing and rewriting notes, drawing graphic organizers or pictures. Here's a good one, writing flashcards. These are effective particularly if you are a kinesthetic learner. If discussing the material in a study group or summarizing and or taping or teaching someone, if these have been an effective strategy for you, then you're most likely an auditory learner. Those that find color coding material, highlighting, pictures, graphic organizers, or using flashcards, well, if these are your go-to strategies, you're probably a visual learner. 3. How can you memorize without just rereading, rewriting, or reciting? Aren't those tedious after a while? So think about capitalizing on your strengths, because the more efficient you are when learning, the more time you have for other activities, and more importantly, the more confident you will be in your courses. What other learning characteristics should you consider when you're deciding which memory devices to use? Think about your attention span, your interest in the material, your motivation, along with the ways you learn, that is, your learning modalities. The following are questions to ask yourself to improve your learning while detouring rote memorization. You know, you might want to also replay the video clip on syllabus. That will provide a review for you on how to use your syllabus as a learning tool. So let's begin. One key question to ask yourself is, why are you memorizing this information? Is it just interesting to you? Are you just curious about it? Or perhaps the professor emphasized it in class or on assignments, so you know it will be on the test. What's your purpose for memorizing the information? The more specific your purpose is, the easier it will be to learn the information, particularly if it's difficult material. The other question to ask yourself is, what clues tell you to remember it? Now, I know you can answer this. The clues are in your syllabus. And in addition, the information that is emphasized in class and in the course materials. But you already know that. So you know it is important information to learn. Now I'm going to describe 4 categories of strategies and identify specific strategies for each. The first category is rehearsal strategies. These are strategies that you use to repeat over time or distribute the practice of the information you want to learn. So rehearsal strategies are 1, yes, distributed practice. 2, recitation. 3, rewriting. For example, the 20-minute test prep works because you are creating your study aids and using them to practice multiple reviews. Feel free to go back to the task management video clip if you need to review that. The next group of strategies emphasize the organization of ideas and their relationship to each other. So you 1, note the parts and how they relate to the whole. 2, organize the overarching principle. 3, recognize key words. 4, consolidate, summarize, or restructure the material. So creating graphic organizers, creating visual representations to restructure the information, anticipating test questions, and using the note-taking strategies that we've covered in the video clips on note-taking, such as 1 plus 3 and plug-in notes, are all illustrations of organizational strategies, and that's why they work. The third category of strategies is retrieval. These strategies are used to create mental hooks that make it easier to recall additional or specific information. So, examples: mnemonics, association, previous experience, background information. All of these are examples of retrieval strategies. Some of these I'm sure you used in school before college, and although they were effective then, you probably haven't really thought about using them here. The final category of memory strategies is imagery. These strategies require visualization and the creative use of images. You'll be trying these two strategies, link and method of loci. The detailed description of these are in Chapter 7. Link is particularly good for learning a foreign language, learning a lot of new terms and their definitions, learning people's names, learning the names of events, etc. Things like that. The method of loci is excellent if you have to learn stages or a process or the steps or some kind of sequence. It's really good for that. Both require your imagination and creativity. So take a risk and try them. I know it's uncomfortable at first, basically because it seems more time-consuming than just flat-out rote memorization, as my students have frequently told me. However, practice will make it easier and more time efficient to use. Plus, it sure is effective. I use Link to remember the names of my students each semester. So the keys to help you remember better and use your creativity are: 1, exaggerate it. Don't just picture one item when you visualize. Instead, see thousands. So let's say I want to remember a student whose name is Will. By the way, if there's a Will out there, I want you to know I'm using my nephew's name. Okay, back to exaggeration. How about picturing thousands of students named Will and who look like Will, creating a huge formation of the initial W on the field in the dome? Another key to use is make it very unusual. The more unusual, the better you'll remember. You remember better what you did last weekend if it was unusual. Otherwise, in time, it becomes a blur. One weekend is the same as another. So let's use Will as the example again, but this time I'll use Will Smith, the actor. All right, his glasses are in the shape of a W, with his eyes between the vertical strokes of the letter. Or instead, I might picture long, straight fangs to depict the 2 L's in his name. Very unusual, wouldn't you say? Okay, it is unusual to me, but you may have an even more unusual image. A third key is to create the absurdity. Think of an image that is utterly ridiculous, something that can't happen, outrageous, something absurd. I might picture hundreds of dill pickles instead of hair on Will Smith's head. Get it? Dill, Will. It only has to be absurd to you for it to be effective. And yes, this is absurd to me. And last, associate it to something familiar. Visualize it linked to something you already know. So I may associate it by picturing Will Smith with the colorful and unusual clothing typical of the singer will.i.am. A double dose of association with this one. To read more complete descriptions and other examples of these strategies, see Chapter 7. I think this is a fun topic, particularly if you are trying strategies you have never used. All of these strategies, particularly the imagery ones, are personal for you to use for learning. No one's going to ask you what the images were that helped you remember. Well, maybe they will. But you want to know something? You can keep that private. So while you're remembering, guess what? There's a little smile that comes across your face. So crank up your imagination and creativity and give a few of these strategies a whirl. What's that saying? No guts, no glory. Here's to your success.